Hello everyone.
The little girl was tossing and turning in her sleep. Soft moans and murmurs could be heard from under the covers. She was dreaming for certain. But something seemed different. There was sweat on the girl's forehead, and her face wasn't peaceful as usual. What was she dreaming of? Elle was standing on a rocky ground staring at a scarecrow. The loosely hanging clothing was flapping from the harsh and cold wind that was blowing. She shivered and wrapped her arms around herself, rubbing to get warm. The scarecrow looked very creepy, almost like a skeleton. With undulating thin fingers that moved in the wind, it seemed to be waving or pointing ahead. Curious as she was, she started walking into that direction, even though a shudder moved through her as she passed the scarecrow.
And welcome to the Haze, a new exhibit that is based on the dreams of
The little girl was tossing and turning in her
the person that we've been looking
and murmurs could
after
be
before,
heard
Elle, I
from
believe
the
it is.
covers.
And
She was dreaming for
I've done three
something
things on, three videos on this stuff before, and this is our fourth one. This one seems to be based on the idea of what happens when you have dreams that are confusing or scary along those things. You end up in the haze. And as you can tell already, this story is voiced, so I won't be talking during that. I'll just be quipping up during the parts that we have of looking around and whatnot. And so far this is looking pretty neat. We have what almost is kind of like a barren wasteland of some sort. It's very different from the colorful ideas of what we had before. Remember, like the bluish lands, so the watercolors and all that. This one is quite a bit more dredgy. You can see stuff misted out before us, or fogged out, I guess, would be a better way of saying it. And I also have a map, so we'll be going through each thing as we're supposed to be.
Excuse me? She asked, confusion clear on her face.
And unfortunately,
Make yourself scarce and be quick about it. The gnome beckoned her forward.
the stories do not start when you click on them. They're automated, so they're just running over and over again. So I guess I'll have to be stopping and jumping this video to be able to get the stories on start up at the right time.
Biting her lip. All right, she mumbled.
Ooh. Alright, let's take a look at this story right here.
A strange, dark, and barren landscape opened up to her. The howling wind deafened her. Slowly she moved forward, walking toward what seemed to be a house. It was hard to see in the distance. There seemed to be a fog hanging over the land, even though the wind should have cleared the air. The house was abandoned. Some overturned furniture was left, and nature had found its way inside. Not that the plants were lush and green and nice. They had a sickening color to them. It made Elle sad to look at them. She moved further into the abandoned village and saw a figure at one of the ruined buildings. "Hello, I'm Elle. Who are you?" she called out as she waved, happily moving toward it. "Go away!" A grumpy, growling voice greeted her. She halted instantly and looked at the gnome, for that was what it was. "Excuse me?" she asked, confusion clear on her face. "Go away! Move along! Make yourself scarce and be quick about it!" The gnome beckoned her forward. "But I wanted to ask you," she started before getting interrupted. "I don't answer questions. Leave me alone. Don't make me get my spike." The look on the gnome's face changed from mere grumpy to menacing. Elle sighed, hung her head and nodded, biting her lip. "All right," she mumbled softly, walking past the gnome further into the strange landscape. She felt sad that the first sign of life had been such a disappointment. She noticed a statue further away and walked up to have a closer look. It was a statue of a small, thin boy who seemed to be looking in the distance, waiting for something or someone to arrive. Elle sighed. So many questions. Who was the boy? What had happened to the people in the village? Why was the gnome so mean to her? She looked around, hoping to find somebody who might help her, as they always had done in her dreams.
Alright, so this is the gnome character, and they have a story thing right next to him too, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. I'm just going to paraphrase this, so if you want to read it all, you can go ahead and stop the video and do that way. Essentially, the gnome used to live in a community that was flourishing, but eventually people started going missing, one at a time. The gnome's feelings of joy and happiness went towards pains and suffering. As everyone started to disappear, the village essentially got abandoned and everything wasn't working right because there was no longer people around. And the gnome became fearful and did not want to interact with anybody anymore, just to hopefully stop the pain of being left alone. And this must be the statue they were talking about. Does look pretty nice for a statue, and I guess these are portraits? And I guess the statue of the boy in the village was made so nobody would forget about him. His name was Ralph. He had come from a different place. He was scared and bewildered at first. The village had taken him in. He couldn't speak anything at first, so with a lot of patience and gentle words, they got him back to coherency. Sometimes they'd find him just scared out of his mind after a dream. Dreams were always the same. A strange sounds would surround him and weird things would grow out of him. Eventually, the sleep in the dream would take him a lot more. Eventually one day Ralph just stood up and said that it's time for him to go back and to let go and come back to where he was supposed to be. And he said thank you for everything to the village, fell down to the ground, and everyone there saw him essentially disappear until nothing was left. So some pretty strange stories so far for this one. There's definitely a change from the more happy stories to ones that are more... I'm not sure exactly how to call it at this point, but they're a bit more about people that have issues and they don't seem to be solving the issues, perhaps. Looks like we should be heading towards the petrified forest next, I guess. Though there's quite a bit of stuff down here that doesn't seem to have a number to it, I don't think. Let's look at this one. The Boy in the Monster Rock. Ah, I see him now. Huh. Essentially, you could see a boy in the monster rock, trapped in the shadows of the rock, a glimmer of who he once had been. He would smile back at you, wouldn't talk to you, but you could feel what he was feeling. The intense sadness that he was feeling would flow through you. The sensation of being scared of the dark, of being trapped inside a small space for all of eternity. You'd feel panic at first, then it would go into something less wild, but much worse. The feeling of giving up. The boy was slowly fading, unable to hold on to hope any longer, and you would feel yourself being sucked into the darkness with him, and your body would fade as well. And you had to make a choice. Would you pull back and break out, or would you wallow in the sensations of loss and letting go and stay with the boy until you're both be swallowed forever? So yeah, a little bit of a darker set of stories here, I have to say. But that kind of goes to the theming, too, of this being the dreamland of having nightmares, I guess. So we're in what is called, I guess, the plane right now. At least that's what I can tell from the map. Is this the petrified forest? No, but there's another story here. The fawn stared at his hands, and then the big statue on the ground, which is also a big giant hand. He was before wandering on fours, but then that memory faded immediately. And then he looked at the goat that was at his feet, slowly bleeding, staring at him with big eyes, mirroring the confusion. He moved his fingers in awe, thinking of the possibilities, all the new things to explore now. The goat stared at his former partner in desperation, wishing this had never happened, cursing their curiosity. For always remembering the shock of when his partner touched a hand changed right then and there. This goat evolved into a fan, and now admiring newfound possibilities. The goat was saying, don't leave me behind. But the goat already knew. The choices had been made. And now he was waiting for the fawn to walk out of his life forever. Is this the next one we're looking for? Yes, it is.
She was running, heart beating heavily in her chest. Looking behind her, she saw a winged creature flapping as it flew after her, and an ugly-looking creature that looked like a strange dog, barking and running below it. They were chasing her, screaming at her in a language that made no sense. She didn't know why, just that the ruin behind them and these creatures scared her so much, she was shivering and running for her life. It seemed they were gaining up on her. She cried out for help and tried to run even faster.
Alright. Guess the creature's up here then, perhaps? Yeah, there's definitely creatures up here. Ah, we got another story thing down here. Trapped in the darkness, seeing the light, unable to reach it. Responsible for the souls down here, Dawn sighed. Didn't know how they got down there, but they couldn't stay there forever. If they did, the darkness would fall upon everything and it would never go away. It would be internal. It was a heavy weight. So heavy she could not move. She begged and pleaded with her captors, but only laughed and barked at her. She would not give up, though. There was a ray of light. There was her hope. Sometimes she would be free to rise. Darkness would come to an end. And her companions and her would walk out of the sun once again. I guess this would be her companions in the dark here, and this would be her staring at the ray of hope. And those would be the ones that were keeping him down. That is number 6. We're looking for number 4. Ah, here we go.
Suddenly she was somewhere else. The wind howled over a plain, and sand danced over the ground. At first she thought she was looking at piles of rocks scattered around the plain, but with another shudder that chilled her to the bone, she realized she was looking at dead creatures. They looked like figures from a movie she once sneaked a peek of, watching through a slightly open door when her parents were watching TV and when she should have been asleep in bed. Trolls or demons, that kind of thing. They seemed to be made of stone. Someone was watching the plain like her. She hid behind the pile of rock that seemed to be the only bump not made out of bodies, and took a cautious peek, afraid of being chased off again. The creature looked like a warrior. She couldn't tell if he was alive or not. His features had a skeletal look on them, and he didn't seem to move. He had a strange-looking weapon in his hand, bits of which were fluttering in the wind. So were his clothes. She clasped her hand in front of her mouth to stifle a scream when the head moved slowly to turn and look straight at her. She was frozen and couldn't have moved had she wanted to. Panic took hold of her, and her breathing got heavy, her heart beating out of her chest by now. Staring back at the warrior, unable to help herself, she swallowed hard and waited. The creature seemed to be staring at her for ages. Then it slowly moved back, and he was overlooking the plain once more. She thought she saw his shoulders move as if he had just sighed deeply, but she could have just imagined it. After a while she felt confident to move again, the warrior being as still as before.
Alright, I guess this is the warrior right in front of us, which I guess the story thing is for. Staring at the plains, watching the winds move sand over bodies, friends and foes alike, buried forever and over again. He had won, he had slain his enemies, avenged the death of his confrades, he had been rewarded, praised. No joy, no pride. After a time there was not even anger and pain, just nothing, and emptiness. Warrior was trapped in a memory, trapped in this realm and only moving back once in a while. It was getting harder and harder every time. Sometimes the stare was interrupted by a sound, a movement, a visitor in this realm or the next. A glance, a moment of connection, and then it was lost again. Only the battlefield remained, forever. Here's some pictures of, looks like plains and the warrior and stuff like that. Definitely quite an amount of bodies out here, though. Let's take a look at this castle over here, because I looked at it earlier, but I didn't actually go inside. Invisible, well, transparent warriors, kind of like the warrior we saw out there, but these ones aren't golden. Huh. Kinda strange there's no story marker for this spot, but I guess that's just how it is. I guess we have to go past the plane and towards number 5, which is on the left corner of the sim. Left top corner, I mean. Okay, we've hit the left top corner, so I guess we have to head over this way. There's quite a big ravine around here. Up this way, I guess? It's the only actual path, I guess, if you would call it that. Ah, here's a story marker, yeah.
This one looked like the creatures from her cousin's space comics. She was on a ridge, trying to keep her balance, walking slowly to the other side of a large ravine. When she reached the other side, she saw another ruined building. Still the curious child, she decided to check it out. She climbed on top of the rubble until she reached the roof. She turned around to take a look at her surroundings when she felt something pushing at her back, and before she knew it, she fell down a hole. Scrambling to her feet, surprisingly not bleeding or feeling any pain from her tumble, she started to climb up again, only to stop and stare as a creature came into sight, staring at her from the edge of the hole. Big eyes on sticks were looking at her. The creature reminded her of the watchers she encountered in her dream once. They had been colorful and bright, though, and helpful. This one looked like the creatures from her cousin's space comics, and there was nothing helpful or bright about it. "Gurgle!" it screamed, hopping excitedly. "Gurgle!" Then moved the eyes down to stare at her, the big mouth snarling at her. "Gurgutlacha!" It seemed to be a warning, a threat. It sat down, eyes on her. She was trapped. It was clear she'd get hurt if she tried to move past the creature. She moved back down again and shivered once more. It was pitch black, and she couldn't see anything at all. Who knew what was down there with her in the shadows? Fighting back the tears which she felt welling up, she sat down, as close to the light as she could, hugging her knees. She had never felt so afraid and alone before.
Well, that's no good. Seems we got trapped by a creature.
She was on a ridge, trying to keep her balance.
I guess this would be where the... Oh yeah, here it is. Strange looking thing, I have to say.
Still the curious child, she decided to check it out. She climbed.
I guess this would be the hole we're down in. There's a pot down here at least.
She felt something pushing at her back, and before she knew it, she fell down a hole. Scrambling to her feet, surprisingly.
Number 6 is the forest. What's this over here, I'm wondering? Oh, there's a cushion. Huh. You just lean up here, I guess.
"Gurgle!" it screamed, hopping excitedly. "Gurgle!" Then moved the eyes down.
I do remember there being one down here somewhere for number 6, because I accidentally picked it up once. Here we have a dragon reser, though I'm going to go ahead and keep on foot for this. Ooh, that's creepy looking. The flower has a skull in it. Not what was I expecting there. Hmm. That's a pathway leading straight from the forest, so I guess I have to go over here. Here we are.
It held a doll in its hand and was wrapping the strands of hair it pulled off. When she opened her eyes again, the chill hadn't left her. Her environment had, however. She found herself wandering around in a dark forest. Strange creatures were lurking among the trees, and their screeches and growls made her teeth chitter. She saw some flowers which looked pretty, but when she got up close, they were just as scary as everything else. Little skulls were staring at her. She felt eyes on her from just about every corner. A creature with very thin little skulls were staring at her. She felt eyes on her from just about every corner. A creature with very thin legs backing away slowly. Something tugged on her hair. Looking up, she saw a huge rat standing on its hind legs. It was like a creature she had seen in a cartoon movie once. It held a doll in its hand and was wrapping the strands of hair it pulled off of her head around the doll. Then it looked up at her and opened its mouth wide, showing its sharp teeth. The screeching sound that came out of it was similar to fingernails on a chalkboard. The rat was laughing as it took a pin and pushed it into the doll. Instantly she felt a very sharp sting in her arm. Ouch! Rubbing her arm, she stared around her, wondering what happened. The snarling creature was still there, but kept its distance from the rat. Doll and then back at the rat. The grin was even scarier than the pain she felt. "Go away! Leave me alone! What did I do to you?" she cried out, tears now streaming down her face. Suddenly she remembered the gnome she had met before, her own words sounding so familiar as he had said something similar. She started to move her arms, hitting the air around her, swatting at things that weren't there. "Go away! Go away!" She rushed away, away from the rat, away from the thin-legged creature, away from the creepy flowers, out of the dark forest.
Jeez. It looks like we have another story here for probably the rat, it looks like, since it's the closest one to it. And these creatures do not look all that happy either. And some of the skull flowers around as well. Some mantis-looking creatures around too. The rat had been bad, really bad. As he got older, he'd find himself in this place more often, surrounded by snarly, menacing creatures, keeping him trapped. He heard a sound. Someone was coming. He let out a snarl. He didn't want them to come. It was bad when they came. He watched in horror as somebody came closer, a little girl. Please, don't make me, he begged in silence, but the creature snarled and stared at him. As the girl grew longer, he knew it hurt them again. As she came close, he'd yank off some of the hair, staring at her as she realized what had just happened. Feeling his hands around the doll, the pin moved in his hand and pushed into the doll, gulping as he knew what would come next. He heard the girl cry out in pain, felt the pain tenfold in his own body. He screamed in pain and shuddered at the sound he made. Then did it again and again, unable to stop himself. He cried invisible tears as the girl's eyes filled with pain, despair, and accusation. Watched her flee as they all did before, feeling so much remorse and no way to voice them. He cried within as the creatures around him growled and snarled contently. His misery was clear, his penance was being paid. Soon he'd wake up again. Until next time. So the rat perhaps isn't as bad as we had thought, but
Rubbing her arm, she stared around her, wondering what happened. The snarling creature was
I guess this is our next destination over here.
When she came down again, she saw people gathering. A group of robed men were moving down. She was on a narrow bridge crossing another deep ravine. On the other side, she climbed up a hill and saw another ruined building. Hoping she might be safe there, she stepped inside. Tripping over something in the dark, she stumbled further into the room. A flickering light seemed to be coming from upstairs. Thinking there might be a warm fire there, she slowly walked up, looking back every now and then, just in case the creatures had followed her. When she got upstairs, there was nothing that even remotely looked comfortable. Just a hole in the ground where the light seemed to be coming from. Peering over the edge, she saw a figure, barely visible. A wavering figure of what? A robed person. Was it a priest? A monk? Or perhaps just a hermit? It was a ghost, that much she knew for sure. It looked up at her briefly, a soft smile on his face. Then he seemed to forget all about her again. Sighing softly, realizing she'd not get any conversation or friendliness from a ghost, she moved back down the stairs again. When she came down again, she saw people gathering. A group of robed men were moving down from the stairs of the roof, huddling before the pillars, curiously watching her. Even though there was a group, she didn't get any of the menacing sensations she had experienced with all the other creatures she had encountered. Their demeanor was friendly. They bowed their heads reverently toward her, communicating amongst themselves. Through wordless conversation, they seemed to reach a conclusion. One of the men had a robe draped over his arms. He walked up to her, head bowing, arms reaching out to hand her the robe. Not having been warm since she arrived, she didn't even think of it and just accepted the robe, wrapping it around her as quick as she could. It fit her perfectly. Suddenly she remembered the ghost in the hole. Hoping these people were more helpful than the rest, she looked at the one who handed her the robe. "I'm Elle. I think I'm lost. Can you tell me where I am? And who is the man in the hole upstairs?" Feeling a bit more comfortable as she was finally warming up a bit. Her question seemed to agitate the friendly men, and they gestured between themselves again. Most of them were shaking their heads vigorously. Then one of them, who looked much older than the others, moved towards her and touched her arm gently. He pointed upstairs and shook his head again. Then he pointed outside. All the other men looked at the spot he was pointing at. It was a tower on top of a steep, high mountain. They all pointed towards it, and the older man gently nudged her to move outside again. Elle wasn't sure what they meant, but as they had been the friendliest so far, she figured the tower was her way out of here. She thanked them all for the directions and the robe, and forgot about her other questions, eager to get home.
alright, I guess this would be some of the robed man and the building right here that we found the ghost in, so the ghost is probably in there somewhere. Oh, that's kind of a creepy picture on the right, I have to say. It's just kind of abstract and with the monk-like people in almost the black and white styling. It's kind of Guess this would be the ghost down here that they were talking about. I guess he must have done something bad or didn't agree with the others, I assume. They don't give us any sort of real understanding of why he's in the hole as a ghost. Actually, they don't give us any particular understanding of the robed men, it looks like. So I don't see any other story things around here. In any case, I guess we'll be heading on to number 8 now, and that was the tower that they pointed at, which is way up in the, I guess you'd call it around the center of the sim. Number 8's actually kind of off on its own, which is kind of weird. And this is the shop area. Ooh, they're even selling a story box for the audio. Alright, I guess we'll go ahead and move on then. Oh, there's a set of stairs down here, actually. Boogeyman, I think that says. Some ruins, it looks like. Oh, a bed. Let's see. Nothing over there. Oh, there's a set of stairs over here, though. Oh, this area is pretty colorful.
And then there were colors. Such lovely. She was walking around in a castle, continuously walking up and down stairs through doorways, trying to find her way out. Each time she thought she had found it, and then there was a wall where a door should be, stairs going nowhere. It felt like a maze, a labyrinth she remembered from a movie. Frustrated, she called out for help, but there was not a sound. Only the wind blowing through all the openings seemed to be howling at her. Out of one of the windows she saw the high mountain and the tower on top. "That's where I need to go," she called out in frustration. "I want to go home. Let me go home." She banged on the walls of the castle, stormed up and down stairs again. Then, taking a moment to catch her breath in one of the rooms, she saw a crest hanging on the wall. She stared at it angrily, thinking it was the crest of whomever had lived here. Blaming whoever they were, she picked up a rock and aimed to hit the shield. "Stupid people," she called out as she threw.
Okay, the one I had gone to before was actually number 10. This is the real 8. Whoopsie. So let's go ahead and take a look inside of here. So I guess Ellie's kind of getting stuck in like a maze-like castle, which I guess is represented by this. Talked about a crest as well. This actually kind of looks like a home somebody would be in. Oh, there's the crest probably right there. SMCKBA. CKB, I mean.
That's where I need to go, she called out in frustration. I want to go home. Let me go.
Alright, at this point, we actually have to head to the tower next. So let's go ahead and do that.
There was a dragon flying there.
Looks like this is the next story spot.
Down for a place to hide. The dragon. And then she was at the foot of the high mountain, desperately trying to find a way up. There was no path, no ladders, nothing. And when she tried to climb up the rocks, she had to stop after a few meters. It was just too steep. She'd fall down. Feeling defeated, she sat down and started crying. After all this time, she found the mountain, and now she couldn't get to the tower anyway. Would this nightmare never end? Swoosh, swoosh! Something was flying over her head. Heavy wings were moving air. She could feel it. She looked up with teary eyes, seeing some creature moving above her. She blinked a few times to clear her view, and then clasped her hand in front of her mouth to stop another scream from escaping. There was a dragon flying there. She scrambled up and looked around for a place to hide. The dragon looked at her as it circled above. Expecting it to torture with fire breath, she cringed, unable to find somewhere to shield herself. She closed her eyes and waited for the inevitable, and waited and waited. The sound of flapping wings had stopped. With her heart beating heavily, she slowly opened her eyes and looked straight into the huge dragon's face. It tilted its head as it looked at her curiously, nostrils vibrating, tongue licking the air. It had huge, sharp teeth, but its eyes were friendly. The dragon lowered its head and gently nudged her side. Hesitantly, she reached out to touch its nose. It was warm and softer than she'd imagined. The dragon nudged her again. Then it lay down on the ground, looking at her and then turning its head around. Did it want her to climb on the back? Elle was unsure. As the dragon nodded at unspoken thoughts, she gave it a thin smile and climbed on between the spicy pieces on its back, holding on to the one right in front of her. Legs tightly against the dragon's sides. It was going to fly, wasn't it? It was going to... Oh, and they were off! The dragon flew off with heavy beating of wings and a growling sound that seemed to vibrate across the land. It took her for a ride all over the places she had roamed around in, until they reached the tower. It landed on a wall and made sure she'd slide down the right way. She fell on the ground, and with shaky limbs held on to the wall, trying to get up again. "Hello, little girl." She looked up in surprise. Someone was actually speaking to her, and nicely too. She saw a boy standing on the wall, caressing a little dragon that was perched on his arm. The dragon who had taken her up roared once more and then flew higher up the tower and perched on a ledge, watching them and the lands all around. "Hello," she stammered, still in shock of the whole situation. "I'm Elle. Who are you?" she asked. The boy smiled. "Why, I'm the dragon keeper, of course. Pray tell me, how did you manage to get Petey to fly you up here?" pointing at the dragon above. She usually ignores all creatures unless they're a threat. Ellie shrugged. I don't know. She found me trying to climb the mountain and took me on her back. The dragon keeper pondered. I suppose you could have found the chalice then. Did you find and touch it? Tilting his head as he looked at her again. Ellie frowned as she thought hard. She didn't remember touching any chalice. I don't know. I don't think so. The boy looked surprised. Oh, that is strange then, because touching the chalice will make Petey come look for you straight away. And if she deems you dangerous, you'd have been ashes by now. He laughed loudly at the shocked look on Ellie's face. No worries. You are safe, little girl. Petey likes you. The dragon roared in agreement from above. Ellie glanced up and then back at the boy. What is this place? I don't think I've seen it before. The keeper grinned. Oh, but you have. Last time you were here you couldn't walk yet, though, so you probably have forgotten. He waved at the land stretching out in front of them. This is the Haze, little Ellie. This is where you go to when your dreams are strange, scary, and confusing. Ellie shivered. It has been scary a lot. There are not many nice people here. She stared down, not really seeing anything because the fog was still heavy. The dragon keeper laughed again. Yes, well, they are not supposed to be nice. Though you would never really get hurt, not physically at least. He stroked the little dragon's back again, which growled softly at the touch, almost like a purring cat. Ellie watched it for a moment before answering. I don't really like it here, even though you seem nice and your dragons too. For quite some time. Oh, the dragon keeper nodded. They are the keepers of the chalice. If they helped you, you did find it. Not many people that come through here find the chalice and are granted the right passageway out. Ellie's face brightened, and she looked at him with hope in her eyes. Does this mean I get to go home now? He nodded. Yes, once you are at the tower, you will find the way back home in fairly calm weather. He looked down towards the plains in the west. Not everyone is that lucky. Ellie wondered what he meant or whom he was talking about. Then she remembered about the statue of the boy. The statue in the village, that boy, is that you? The dragon keeper looked surprised for a moment. Oh, you mean Ralph? No, that is not me. That poor soul roamed these lands for ages before he found his way out. He smiled reassuringly to her. All right, let's get you back home, shall we? And he reached out to touch her arm.
All right. Dragon Keeper right here with his dragon in his hand. Got a little tower here that we can take a look at real quick. Ah, here's the dragon we rode on. Another pillow if you wanted to sit on it. Okay, so that tells us exactly what the Haze is, which I had assumed that earlier, that this was a place where essentially you had scary, confusing dreams at, or I guess you would call them nightmares as well, to a degree. A girl and her cats. At first she was thought in heaven. Beautiful castle, twilight sky, peaceful night. And the cats everywhere, purring and asking for affection. They love to be patted and crawl into her lap and stay for hours, snoozing the time away with her. Whenever she tried to leave the castle, she just saw a vast barren landscape with nobody else around. It was just her and the cats, and her book. She read the book a million times already. She loved the cats and named them all, but they were her friends, her family, and her companions. But as lovely as they weren't the company she craved for. She was lonely. So we have the cats and a girl right here as well. So I guess these are all the people that haven't found their way out of the haze yet. And this would be the way to number 10, which I guess this would be the actual way to get to it. I guess what I took originally was the way that you would go from number 10 to the shop, probably. So, whoopsie. Hopefully I'm not missing anything else, though, but I did do quite a bit of looking around, and I also went through that plain area that didn't actually point you to any of the number stories as well. And here we are back towards the colorful section. And our last story point is right here.
She was passing through a gate, and then another one, and then there were colors, such lovely colors everywhere, such a relief after all the darkness and barren lands. She smelled the flowers, touched the trees, and finally got a smile back on her face. Glancing behind her, she could still see the haze through the gates, but blurry and non-threatening. A memory in the making. Ellie, Ellie, wake up, sweetie. Her mother was stroking her arm gently as she woke up, warm and safely tucked under her duvet. Hi, little one. Are you awake now? We woke up and heard you scream. Did you have a bad dream? Ellie sighed softly and nodded. Yes, Mummy, it was horrible. There was, and then she tried to think, but it all became blurry and blurrier with each second. There were dragons, she remembered, but all of the rest were now only memories of emotions and sensations. I was scared, so scared, and alone, and cold. She shivered a little and let her mum hug her tightly. So safe and warm and protected. Well, it's all over now, her mother kissed her on the forehead. Back to sleep now, darling. It's the middle of the night, you know. Ellie nodded and hugged her duvet around her. She'd not go back to the haze that night, but the fear she had experienced stayed with her at the back of her mind from then on. And before our little girl would be all grown up, she'd see more of the haze than she would have cared for.
And that's the haze. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed it quite a bit. With every one of these, they seem to do better and better with what they come out with, I have to say. The only thing I think I would say that I would change would be perhaps the story is not automatically doing the voices, the audio voices, over and over again, and perhaps set to being clicked on or something. But beyond that, everything else was, wow, this is pretty amazing. And it was kind of interesting to see how some of the stories being a bit more darker, I guess. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. See you then.